Hey everyone, welcome back. So this is part 2 of our Survivor Branford All-Star Season simulation, and this is the final part. So we will be covering everything from the merge all the way through to the finale, and we will have, by the end of this video, a winner crowned. So just to recap, we're left with 13 of the 20 players we started with. We have 2 tribes right now. We have the Beach tribe down to 6 members. They just voted out Mayor at the last tribal council. Angela and Joe were on the short end of that vote. And then we have the Rice tribe still with all 7 members from the second swap. So I know you could sense it, the castaways can sense it, so without further ado, it's time to merge. So our final 13 is merged into one tribe. This will be known as the Sangria tribe, a throwback to Season 1's merged tribe. So everyone came together, it was quite a joyous occasion. They had a spectacular merge feast, there were several bottles of wine on the table. I'm not going to out who had a little too much wine to drink. I don't want to embarrass them here, but just rest assured there were some people that were feeling a little happier than others at the merge. And this just represented a great time for people to catch up with old allies or to have conversations with others for the first time. And really, you could feel there was a buzz in the air. This was a long time coming, and these players earned getting to this point. So when you have a huge group of people like this, there are plenty of storylines going on. I guess I'll start with the fact that from day one on the Rice tribe, you had these 2 strong alliances, each with 3 members, that hadn't exactly been seeing eye to eye. So you have Dennis, Mark, and myself on one side, and Larry, Rob, and Steve on the other. The one time we did go head to head, Larry, Rob, and Steve came out on top, pulling the majority of the tribe over to vote with them. Now, it remains to be seen if these 2 alliances treat this merge as an arms race of sorts and try to gather as many numbers as they can to go against each other, or if their tight threesomes just get lost in the shuffle with all of these people here. Other things worth noting, we have 2 of the players with idols right now, so Alba has an idol and Dennis has an idol. You have Angela and Autumn, who very recently had a major fight. Things have sort of calmed down since then, but Angela did not forgive and forget and went after Autumn at the last vote. Was unsuccessful, clearly, but you still have that potential tension at the tribe, which may cause everyone to call a truce and simply have to vote one of them out for everyone's sake. So you also have players like Brittany and Charlie and Jamin who have kind of gone in and out of different alliances, so the other players in the game, knowing that, might try to set out to form quick bonds with any of those 3 in order to gather them for the upcoming vote. So now let's see what we're being told are the alliances. So these first 2 are not any surprise. You have the 2 tight original Rice alliances of 3. And then we have a newer alliance that's sprung up. Not fully developed yet, as you can see it's only a 3 strength, so fairly weak still, but you have Alba, Autumn, and Jamin. I think this might be Autumn's attempt to recreate some of the early security she had in the game. All 3 of those former alliance members of her have been since voted out or medevaced in Meredith's case, so Autumn trying to pull deep back to the original Beach tribe is seemingly working with both Alba and Jamin right now. That'll be an interesting group to watch. And then finally we have a 4th alliance, which contains Angela, Joe, Larry, and Rob. So this group is what's left of the formerly dominant 6-person horse tribe, the tribe that used to have both Amanda and Mare on it. So these 4 are recalling their glory days of episodes 4 and 5 and are leaving their options open to work together. You have Larry and Rob that are in this alliance, and they have an even stronger alliance with Steve, so they have alternatives in case things don't work out quite so well with their plan A. And then I'll just mention that you've got Brittany and Charlie that are not a part of any alliance right now. Maybe that's their plan? It could be a dangerous one if people know that they're just out on their own. It could be an easy first vote off. When you get to the merge, everybody's just looking for an excuse not to be the first out, similar to the first tribal council of the game. So that could put them in a dangerous spot, but it also might make them a valuable asset going forward. So let's jump into the first individual immunity challenge of the season. And this challenge is hard to handle. So each of the castaways are holding a bow-like device, a semicircular track with a ball on top. And in addition to this, they're standing on a sloped balance beam. And then every 5 minutes, they're going to have to continue to move further down the balance beam where it becomes narrower. So if anyone steps off the beam or drops their ball on the ground, they're out of the challenge. So the last person left wins individual immunity, and the necklace is particularly beautiful this season, so everybody will be giving it their all to have the privilege of wearing it. So let's find out who wins. And Mark has won immunity. Great job by Mark. This is not his first immunity win. You'll recall that in Season 3 of Survivor Branford, he won a similar kind of challenge, balancing balls and outlasting Rob in the end. And then even in Season 5, he was a strong challenge competitor, winning one of them in the process. So Mark has immunity, and let's see how that's going to shape the afternoon at the Sangria tribe. So back at Sangria, we have the two people with idols. We have Alba and Dennis with an idol. And beyond that, we don't have any other information. So recalling the storylines, you have the two original Rice alliances that are very strong. You might think they'd go after each other by default, but the merge represents a new chapter in the game, so maybe they would be open to trying to work together. You have Autumn trying to gather some new numbers in the face of her being the last of her original alliance left in the game. And then you have that horse group. So this could really go any number of ways. And we have to put out some additional seats at Tribal Council tonight because with 13 players there, it's going to be a little bit of a tight squeeze. As you can see, so everybody files into Tribal Council and they have a seat, and there were lots of topics discussed at Tribal Council. We talked about hidden immunity idols, thoughts around who's got them, we talked about earlier dynamics in the game, and we were also told that whoever is voted out tonight will become the first member of the jury. So everyone goes ahead and casts their vote, and if anyone has a hidden immunity idol and would like to play it, now would be the time to do so. And at this point, everyone looked around quite a bit, but Alba stayed planted to her seat. Dennis picked a spot on the wall and didn't stop staring at it. And the time came and went, and no idols were played. So let's read the votes. So the first vote's for Alba. The second vote's for Alba. So 2 votes Alba. 3 votes Alba. Wondering at this point if we're just stacking the Alba votes early on to fake everyone out, or if she's going home in a landslide. 4th vote is for Angela, so 3 votes Alba, 1 vote Angela. 4 votes Alba, and another vote for Angela, so 4 votes Alba, 2 votes Angela. 3 votes Angela, so things tightening up a bit. 5 votes Alba, 3 votes Angela. It's likely only going to take 7 votes to be voted out tonight. 6 votes Alba, 3 votes Angela, 4 votes left. And the 8th player voted out is Alba, with an idol in her pocket. So we have 10 votes for Alba, 3 votes for Angela. So a disappointing end for Alba, but she might not say that. I think she's actually quite excited to be the first over at Ponderosa, looking forward to some good R&R. And while some people would have been furiously bitter over being voted out with an idol in their pocket, Alba took it quite gracefully, stood up and wished everyone well on her way out. So now let's see how the votes went. So those voting for Angela were Alba, Autumn, and Brittany. So you have to think Autumn was the ringleader of this. It's almost as if she was retaliating for Angela voting for her at the last time. So it's funny though, because Autumn's alliance that she had been working with of her, Alba, and Jamin, Alba stuck by her side. Jamin didn't. Jamin ditched her, maybe sensing which way the tides were going and wanted to get off that sinking ship. And in Jamin's place, Brittany was along for the ride. She hadn't really had any alliance, so she could have potentially caught wind of this plan and thought it was the plan and went along with it, but unfortunately just did nothing but put herself in the minority here. And then you have everyone else voting for Alba. So we'd seen how earlier on Alba was doing such a great job. She found an idol, she was well liked by the Beach Tribe, she'd even formed a tight bond with Charlie. However, in this new age of Survivor, being too likable might even be worse than being hated, as all it does is make you a threat. And proof of this came from none other than Charlie himself. So if you'll recall, Charlie was there with Alba when she found the idol, and they bonded over it, but Charlie came to realize that he had a valuable piece of information on his hands. So what his goal was at the merge was to spread that information, tell people that Alba had an idol, that she was very well liked by everyone, and people didn't watch out, all of a sudden it would be the final 5 and Alba would still be right in the thick of things. So Charlie actually tried to turn the tables on her, and his plan worked out in the end. At first he thought about trying to get Alba to let him hold the idol for safekeeping, that way he could keep it once she was gone, but he thought that might have been a little too cute, may have tipped her off, so he didn't go that far. He'll settle for her idol going back into hiding, and he'll take another shot at finding a second idol now. So let's go ahead and get Alba on the line.
Your call has been forwarded to an automatic voice message.
Oh, no, sorry. I am not going to share Alba's number publicly, so I guess we'll have to leave it at this. Hopefully she's at the pool at Ponderosa or maybe sailing out on the ocean and just doesn't have time for this, but that's okay. I'm glad that she's able to put the game behind her and doesn't necessarily feel the need to talk about it. We'll see her anyway at the next tribal council as a member of the jury. Although I will say 2 Rings is a little suspicious. Hopefully she didn't see it was me and decide to send me to voicemail, but what can you do? So in any event, let's continue on and move to episode 9. And here we are at the final 12. We just lost Alba after she was blindsided with an idol in her pocket. I think the fact that she had an idol plus she wasn't extremely well connected with anyone made her an easy choice for the group. But now moving a little further into the merge, we'll see if that decision gets a bit harder. So let's revisit our alliances. And we're pretty much at status quo. We still have our 2 strong rice alliances. We have Autumn and Jamin that we're told are staying together, but that doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me as they didn't vote the same way in the last vote. Jamin actually voted against someone that had been in that quote-unquote alliance. Not so sure about that one. I'll leave it here, but I'm almost writing it off. And then finally, we have our horse alliance. All of them were united in voting for Alba. And while we think Larry and Rob are tighter with Steve, it remains to be seen if something happens and they go all in with this alliance instead. So let's head off to our reward challenge. And this challenge is boats, brains, and brawn. So the castaways will be divided into 2 teams of 6, and they're going to paddle out to a series of crates. When they get to a crate, one person will have to jump into the water, dive down, untie the crate, and then the whole tribe will lug it into their boat. They're going to do that till they have all their crates. Then once they return them to shore, they're going to stack them in a way such that there are no repeating colors on any side. The first tribe to solve that puzzle will win reward. So normally the castaways will be asked, want to know what you're playing for right about now? But I guess they're going to compete in the challenge first, and then they'll see what they win afterwards. So we're not sure how the teams were divided, but let's find everything out all at once. So winning reward is going to be Angela, Charlie, Brittany, Rob, Mark, and Autumn. And they've won a trip to the Survivor Cafe on tuk-tuks. I gotta say, whenever I hear tuk-tuks, I can only think of one thing, and that's Keith having the time of his life chauffeuring his tribe around on the tuk-tuks. If anyone from this group was going to do that, I'd have to say it would be Mark. Now at the reward, you have quite a mixed bag of players. You have Rob without his 2 alliance mates, you have Mark without his 2 alliance mates, you have Angela and Autumn who have been feuding, you've got Brittany who's not really in an alliance, you have Charlie who's not really in an alliance, so this could be a good opportunity for these people to create something new. We'll have to see if a new alliance pops up. But most of the time in these situations, while they might talk game with each other, no one's really meaning it, and everything's just going to get out once they come back to tribe and talk to their true allies. So after I'm sure it was a nice afternoon, these 6 return to camp, and we head into the next day and the immunity challenge. And the immunity challenge is take the reins. And this challenge works where each castaway is holding a rope in each hand, and there's a wooden disc attached to the ropes down towards the end, and they're going to hold the ropes with enough tension so that the disc stabilizes and the balls on top of the disc won't move. And then every 10 minutes, the castaways are going to have to move their hands down to the next notch in the rope, which will make things quite a bit harder. The last person left standing who has not dropped their ball to the ground wins immunity. So do you guys have a prediction for who that might be? Let's find out. And Steve wins immunity. Nice job by Steve. He has proven strong at these types of balance challenges. In Season 1, he won the final immunity challenge in which he had to stack coins on top of a mallet. And then in Season 5, he finished 2nd place out of 10 people, holding a tennis ball between 2 ropes. So this challenge seems to be within Steve's skill set, and he's going to take home the immunity necklace. So let's go back to the Sangria tribe. And Dennis has the idol. And the idol that Alba went home with was not replaced as that was a pre-merge idol. So there is a merge idol hidden. It was hidden at the beginning of last episode, but still yet to be found. And then in other developments, the Horse Alliance is now a medium strength alliance. So that group is tightening a little bit. Rob and Larry doing a great job having a realistic backup plan if for whatever reason their alliance with Steve doesn't work out, whether that be through him being voted out or through some other kind of severe disagreement. So those 2 have options, and this is also probably making Angela and Joe feel really good because the 2 of them hadn't really been working with anyone else here in the game. And one other interesting thing is that Rob and Larry could use Angela and Joe to further their agenda, so they might not tell Angela and Joe that they're in a tight threesome with Steve. However, they could play it off and try to make Angela and Joe get on board with their plans, even though it was really what the two of them wanted to do with Steve. So I might even consider this the makings of a 5-person alliance with Angela and Joe on the bottom, not knowing that Steve is in here too. And the more I talk that out, the more I think it's actually a really good idea to have a primary alliance, but then have a secondary alliance, which really you're only using to add numbers to your primary alliance that the secondary alliance people might not even know about. So if you don't mind, let's keep that idea under wraps just in case Survivor does call me someday. Who knows, it could be a strategy I try to employ. So let's head off to Tribal Council. We have our 12 tribe mates gathered, and Alba's introduced as the first member of the jury. She comes in wearing her immunity idol and smiling, and some of the castaways can't help but to smile back or just shake their heads, and she's still in good spirits, so that's great to see. So after another interesting discussion, everyone casts their vote. And when the moment of truth comes, Dennis decides not to play his idol again. That's really gutsy. I mean, yes, there are 12 people left in the game, but I don't know how he could feel so secure. Who are his numbers besides Mark and myself? You have this rival alliance that you know is kind of working against you, might even be growing stronger and pulling in some of the spare parts of this tribe, but maybe Dennis knows something I don't. So let's take a look at the votes. So the first vote's for Larry. It's another vote for Larry. 1 vote for Mark. 3 votes Larry. 1 vote Mark. That's 2 votes Mark. We're tied. 3 votes Larry. 3 votes Mark. Larry, that's 4 votes Larry. 3 votes Mark. 5 votes Larry. And that's 4 votes for Mark. 5 votes Mark. 5 votes Larry. 2 votes left. Mark, that's 6 votes Mark. 5 votes Larry. And the 9th person voted out as Survivor Branford is Mark. So that was a very close vote, 7-5. Mark disappointed, but knows he can hold his head high. He played a game full of honor and integrity, which is his MO. He won an immunity challenge, so he accomplished quite a lot in this season. Now let's see how everyone voted. Okay, so Autumn and Brittany voted for Larry, so the two of them were a voting block from the previous tribal council when they went for Angela. And so what they did was they joined up with Dennis, Mark, and myself in voting for Larry. And then that left the Larry, Rob, Steve alliance to vote for Mark, and they picked up everyone else in the tribe. They got Angela, Charlie, Joe, and Jamin. So there's a lot of similarities here to the very first tribal council in that these two guys' alliances went against each other. The alliance of Dennis, Mark, and myself went after Larry, while Larry, Rob, and Steve went after a Mark. Not the same Mark from episode 1, but a different Mark here, one that was actually in the core alliance. And just like I said, so you've got Larry, Rob, and Steve with their agenda of going after Mark. And then somehow Rob and Larry were able to get Angela and Joe in on that. Maybe they were trying to make them think that that idea was born out of their 4 instead. So I like the gameplay. And if I just think quickly back to the reward, it didn't really turn out to be meaningful in terms of the vote. Of the 6 people that went, you had 3 voting for Mark and 3 voting for Larry. So that'll be something I continue to keep my eye on if new bonds are made at the reward, but that didn't work out this time. So coming out of this vote, it really looks like Dennis and I are in a lot of trouble here. We just lost our tight alliance mate. We've seemed to have lost the war against the Larry, Rob, and Steve alliance. And even those who voted with us, Brittany and Autumn, they aren't huge targets in their own right. And I could see them pretty easily just flipping away from us and being welcomed into a different group as they continue to float around the tribe. So Dennis's idol might play a big role coming up. Luckily for him, he didn't use it this time. However, I still think it was quite gutsy as one of his alliance mates was voted out, and it could have just as easily been him. So I'm really glad to be able to speak with my ally from the beginning of the game one more time before he heads off to the jury. So welcome, Mark.
I want to get this going.
Great, so the first thing I'd ask is, what do you think your downfall was in the game?
I don't think I made a downfall. It's still possible for things to work out just fine. I think I'm rooting for my team at this point.
Well, thanks for the support, Mark. Hopefully Dennis and I can do you proud. So the rest of the tribe was against us, but why do you think they went for you?
I think people are nervous about the inter-group bonding and how the merging might or might not have helped things.
Oh, that's interesting. So what do you think would have happened if we didn't merge at that point?
I would have made it much further. I am mad. I'm speaking from my heart.
Oh, sorry to get you wound up, Mark. I mean, I know the merge had to happen at some point, so we just have to accept it and move on. Now, from your perspective, why was it that we went after Larry again?
Because I'm random.
Oh, come on, Mark. We discussed this, and I know the answer, but I was just hoping you could tell everyone in your own words why we went after Larry.
He seemed like a big threat on the other team, so go for it.
So through these first 9 episodes, you were very loyal to myself and to Dennis and viewed us as a power 3 in the game. Was that your ultimate plan had you stayed in the game for a longer period of time?
I put down a plan, which was we should stay loyal to each other and ultimately make it to the last 3.
That was my number one goal. That is a great story. The 3 of us make it to the end.
Yeah, sorry to see you go, but hopefully Dennis and I could still make it to the final 3.
That's actually best case scenario.
So since the 2 of us are talking here and without Dennis around, do you have anything to say about him?
Dennis has been an amazingly strong player. He was probably my closest ally.
What? I thought you told me I was your closest ally.
Nope, that's not true.
Okay, well, maybe I'm not so upset to see you go out. Alright, let me try to maintain some professionalism here, so how have your interactions been going so far at Ponderosa with Alba?
Oh, we were going around sharing small successes. I tried to set it positive.
Well, I'm glad you're taking that approach, and hopefully it means that at the end of the game we won't see a bitter jury. And then finally, let's say that neither Dennis nor myself makes it to the final 3. Do you have a rooting interest outside of our alliance?
I have no idea. Maybe... I have no idea.
Okay, Mark, well, I know the game can be mentally taxing, so I'll let you go and hope to catch up with you soon.
Thanks.
And that was Mark, ladies and gentlemen. Now let's move on to episode 10. And we're here at the final 11, and I don't know about you, but to me it seems like we've come so far, yet there's still so many people left in the game. So let's keep going, take a look at the current alliances, and same old, we still have the Larry, Rob, Steve alliance at full strength. Then there's Dennis and myself having just lost Mark. We are a strong alliance, but our numbers aren't too strong, so our prospects aren't looking very good right now. And then finally there's the Horse Alliance. So it turns out that the Autumn Jamin Alliance didn't pan out after all, and Charlie and Brittany are still without an alliance period, so maybe they're thinking if it's not broke, there's nothing worth fixing. Perhaps reaching the end of the game without an alliance would leave the jury to not be angry at you for anything. Now let's head off to the reward challenge. So this challenge is called Sticks. So each tribe has a number of poles that vary in height, and they have to use them to form a staircase. Once they have the staircase assembled, they could run up it and go through a multi-story wooden maze. While in the maze, one tribe member will retrieve a key. That key will be used to access a bag of puzzle pieces. The puzzle pieces, when put together, will spell out a combination. And then once you're able to unlock your lock, you can raise your flag and win the challenge. So we have odd number of people left, so that probably means one person's going to sit out. It would have been cool to see who that would be and what kind of reaction they would have, but I don't think we're going to get that. So let's see who wins reward. And the team of Joe, myself, Dennis, Autumn, and Charlie win reward. And we are going to head off to the Survivor Spa. So this is a good chance for us to have some light refreshments and clean up a little bit. And for Dennis and myself, who may be on the bottom at this point, this is a pretty good group to go with. Autumn and Charlie don't have an alliance, and we might be able to pull them in. Joe does seem to have something solid, but hopefully he's willing to let us bend his ear a little bit and make a case to him. If we are able to convince Joe to come over to our side, maybe Angela would follow him. So now let's take a look at the immunity challenge. And this challenge is Bermuda Triangles. So as one of my favorite Survivor players likes to put it, this is basically the challenge with the floating dog houses in the water. You have a foot on either side, and then as time goes on, you step more and more to the top until you're at the complete mercy of the moving ocean. So this is an endurance challenge. The last person left standing will win. And there's a twist during the challenge. So what's going to happen is that at some point during the challenge, the castaways will have the chance to jump off and race to the raft, and with the first one being there claiming a secret advantage. So spoiler alert, the secret advantage is a steal a vote, which you might recall from Survivor Cambodia. Didn't quite work out so well for Steven, but maybe whoever gets it here will be able to utilize it to its full potential. So let's take a look at how this challenge goes down. So during the challenge, Dennis was the one to claim the advantage. He sacrificed his chance at immunity to get the steal a vote. It works up until the final 5. And as soon as this was announced, he didn't give it a second thought. He jumped off and was racing to the raft. Several others jumped off as well, but just given Dennis's head start, there was no catching him. So he has an idol, he now has the advantage. He's just going for broke here. He doesn't care anymore about if people are viewing him as a threat, because he knows he's already in a pretty bad situation. And so now we'll see who wins immunity. And I've won immunity. So that's pretty cool. I have to say that I don't think I would be too great at this challenge for real, but I'm guessing that so many people must have just jumped off the floating dog houses where it was really only me left, and maybe I won by default, but I'll certainly take it. And this is definitely a great time for me to have immunity. It might put the sole focus now of the vote on Dennis, but he's got that idol which no one knows about. And we do have a glimmer of hope with the Reward Alliance, which isn't really an alliance, we're being told, but maybe it'll come to fruition. So now let's see what happens back at Sangria. So not much is going on. Dennis has the idol and the steal a vote. For being a few votes into the merge now, things are surprisingly calm. The alliances are just holding true to form. So then let's just head off to Tribal Council and see what ends up happening. So Alba and Mark are here as well as members of the jury. And the way the steal a vote works is that Dennis would announce that he would play it before everyone goes to vote. And then he'd announce whose vote he's stealing and making his own. But he does not choose to use the power, so that leaves everyone to cast their vote as normal. So everyone votes. And Dennis does not play the idol. This is not the first time Dennis has not played the idol in a dicey situation for him. I don't know how he's resisting, but he must just be supremely confident in whatever he thinks the plan is supposed to be here. I would have played the idol in a second if I was in a two-person alliance on the bottom, with my ally being immune, leaving really only me as the target. So let's go ahead and read those votes. First vote is for Jamin, and 1 vote for Autumn. 2 votes Jamin, 3 votes Jamin, and a vote for Angela, so 1 vote for Angela, 1 vote for Autumn, and 3 votes for Jamin. 4 votes Jamin, 2 votes Angela, 3 votes Angela, so a much more divided vote than I would have guessed. That's 5 votes Jamin, 3 votes Angela, 1 vote Autumn, 2 votes Autumn. So with 1 vote left, I think Jamin has technically already been voted out. Weird how they chose the order here, but let's make it official. Jamin is the 10th player voted out in an odd 6-3-2 vote. So we lose our Season 5 winner, but she represented herself well here, made it a few votes into the merge, and had found an idol and been working well with some people in the tribe earlier. So Dennis did make the right call. He must have read the room pretty well because he didn't receive a single vote. I wonder if this was sort of a split vote scenario to guard against idols, but let's take a look at who voted for whom. So since this vote was all over the place, I'm going to try to break it down into small pieces. So Autumn got 2 votes, which was the least, and voting for her were Angela and Joe. Angela just could not leave this grudge behind her, pulls in Joe, her former horse tribe mate. You think they would have only done this though if they felt they had the numbers? Maybe Larry and Rob had told them they'd be along, but didn't actually go that way. So that leaves those 2 to vote for Autumn. And then Angela picked up 3 votes. And we have Autumn voting for her, so firing right back. And voting along with Autumn were Charlie and Jamin. So quite a ragtag group there. None of them really were officially in an alliance, so maybe they cobbled something together and just tried to go after Angela. And this is great because Angela and Autumn continue to have to live with each other now, each having failed to take the other out on several occasions. So finally we could get to the majority of the people that voted for Jamin. And this is really interesting to me. We have Dennis and I who were voting for Jamin. And strangely enough, we voted alongside Larry, Rob, and Steve. So those 2 rival alliances laid down their arms and worked together here. Maybe to Larry, Rob, and Steve it was just Mark that was the problem. And with him gone, either they viewed Dennis and I as more able to be worked with, or they're just not concerned with us anymore because we have a 2-sum in a group of 11, so what power do we really hold? And then as a side note, and I'm certainly not trying to minimize her, Brittany made up the 6th vote for Jamin. So I don't know where we go from here, so potentially the Angela-Autumn feud may blow up again and consume the entire tribe and force people to pick their sides. Dennis and I escaped the wrath of the Larry, Rob, Steve group, although I don't know if that's just a temporary reprieve. And then as a side, I'll quickly mention that the group that went on Reward, again, did not end up voting with each other. So I think going forward, I'm going to place less importance on that until shown otherwise. But enough with that. We've had Jamin waiting patiently here for me to bring her in, so welcome, Jamin.
Hello, hello.
Hello.
How are you feeling right now?
I'm a little nervous about this.
Really? You shouldn't be. If either of us should be worried, it should be me, because I just voted you out, and I'm hoping you're not too angry at me for that.
You don't have to do it. No hard feelings.
Okay, great. That puts me a little bit at ease here. So in seeing your game from my perspective, it seemed like you were never really in an alliance. Do you think that was true?
I agree.
So how come you chose to go with such an unorthodox strategy in the game?
For me, in playing a game, if I don't have to burn a bridge, why? Why do it? So that's why I wasn't trying to make all these different connections.
So we saw that you just went for Angela, but unfortunately for you, weren't able to get her out. What were your thoughts around that vote?
I super strategic and locked in to try and make that happen. But that was the one time where I'm like, if I can do anything, this is my chance.
So Jamin, this will be the first time for you on the jury. How do you plan to assess all the remaining players' games and ultimately who you should give your vote to in the end?
I don't know. I really want to see the cases that come to me.
So earlier in the game, you were at a crazy tribal council where Charlie got 4 votes, but he played his idol, and then you played your idol as well. Did you think that once you saw him play his idol, if you didn't play yours, you were likely on your way out?
Yes. Conversations were still even happening when we were sitting down. You don't know. So yeah. I didn't have a strong sense. It was more of potentially, but I did not have a strong sense that I would have really, really needed it.
So what was your overall experience with Survivor this time?
The good thing about a game like that is that you played against so many different people. It kind of evens out at some point.
Okay, see, no reason to be nervous. That's it, you're done.
Sweet.
Okay, and we're done as well for episode 10. Let's head on to episode 11. And we've arrived at the final 10, and it looks like the aim of the tribe in the last vote was to inject some sort of certainty into the game, meaning Jamin didn't have an alliance, so she might have been a little more unpredictable in terms of where her votes were going. So that leads you to wonder if one of the middle 3 in the top row are likely to suffer the same fate now. So let's check out the alliances, though I think we could probably predict what they are. And that was my prediction. Was it yours? So we've still got the strong Larry, Rob, Steve alliance, the strong but weakened Dennis and myself alliance, and then the alliance that was created on the Old Horse Tribe. Now with Angela and Joe doing their own thing at the last vote when they voted for Autumn, and Larry and Rob being more tightly aligned with Steve, I'm starting to wonder if this new Horse Tribe alliance is really anything to be scared of. But that'll come out in time, so let's take a look at the reward challenge. And this challenge is Basket Brawl. It's an extremely physical challenge. Each team will put up 3 members, and essentially all they're going to do is fight for a ball with the intention of getting it into a basket, and no holds barred in the middle. So this is going to be a rough one. Hopefully the reward is worthy of the effort the castaways will need to put in to win it. So let's see who comes out on top. And winning reward are Dennis, myself, Joe, Autumn, and Angela. And we'll be heading off to see a Cambodian circus. And there was definitely some roughhousing during the challenge. Jeff had to step in a few times and warn certain players that they were facing disqualification if they wouldn't stop. There was definitely some hair pulling and faces being dunked into the water. It was quite a sight. I'm still nursing a blow to the head that came from Charlie's elbow directly to the temple. Hopefully the circus makes me feel a little better, and hopefully the same for the other 4. So it turns out there was a bit of a damper on the reward. Joe had to spend a lot of his time playing peacemaker between Autumn and Angela. Things so minor as who was going to sit where and sharing the food just became huge issues between the 2 of them. Dennis and I eventually needed to get involved and put Autumn at one end and Angela at the other, while the 3 of us shared whispers that one of them may need to be going ASAP. So after that eventful afternoon, we returned to camp under the jealous gazes of the rest of the tribe. Larry and Steve asked questions about how it was, just to be friendly, but others like Rob and Brittany were in no mood to hear about us reflect on the reward and could be seen heading out of camp almost immediately once we got back. So unfortunately at the final 10, this is not one big happy family. So let's go off to the immunity challenge. And this challenge is Ball and a Jack. It's another endurance challenge. Each of us are going to have to stand on a small block while pinning a ball to a frame above us. If any of us step off the block or if the ball falls to the ground, we're out of the challenge. The last person left will win. And given the increasingly grumpy mood of the tribe, we've actually been made a peace offering from Jeff. He's proposing that if at least 5 of us sit out of the challenge, give up our shot at immunity, that a custom shelter will be built for us, which would be sure to increase the mood. So I know that I'm going to give up immunity for that. I think that if you have a tribe in better spirits, it's easier to strategize with them I think it's worth the risk. Hopefully enough other people are with me. So let's see about that decision. No, and only Charlie and Larry are willing to side with me, either feeling comfortable enough where they could give up immunity, or just really understanding the benefits of that professional shelter. But since it's only 3 of us, that's not going to happen. We are simply going to look like idiots for sitting out, not even getting food or anything to make up for it. So I see some of you trying to hide your laughs at our decisions, but that's okay. We don't regret what we did. We have enough self-confidence. So we'll take a seat on the bench and see who wins the challenge. And Steve wins immunity, his second of the season. Should have figured it was another balance challenge with a ball involved. Steve's quickly becoming a heavy favorite at that type of challenge, and he takes it home. And Steve remains in a fairly good spot with a strong majority alliance in a tribe where even 3 people holds a lot of power just because of the dysfunction. So with that, we're going to head back to our pathetic shelter and see how the afternoon plays out. And Dennis still has the idol. He's been bold in how he's managed it, but hasn't needed it yet. And the merge idol has finally been found by none other than Steve. Having just won the immunity challenge and knowing he could take more of a backseat role in the crazy strategizing, he felt there was no harm to taking a walk outside of camp and exploring, and he stumbled upon the idol. I'm curious to see if he fills Rob and Larry in on this. But in the meantime, Steve's putting together quite a game here. And in addition to this, Joe and Larry have started to bond a little bit. After the last vote where they didn't vote together and that Horse Tribe Alliance was a little divided, Joe set out to try to strengthen those bonds. So he and Larry got to talking. Both admitted to each other how much they were missing Mare, who left the game right before the merge and was getting along well with both of them. And they just realized how much they had in common and how much it would benefit them to stick together when surrounded by the rest of this crazy tribe. So the sun's quickly going down, and that could only mean one thing. It's time for Tribal. So we're here at Tribal with idols and advantages aplenty. Dennis and Steve both have idols. Dennis has the Steal a Vote, and he is not using the Steal a Vote once again. So everyone heads off to vote, and honestly, I have no idea where this is going. So when prompted, neither Dennis nor Steve play their idol. We figured Steve wouldn't be playing his idol because he's got the necklace, so that leaves everyone but Steve as fair game. And the first vote's for me. I think that might be the first time I've said that all season. Second vote's for Autumn. 2 votes Autumn. 1 vote Jim. Larry. That's 1 vote Larry. 2 votes Larry. 2 votes Autumn. 1 vote Jim. 3 votes Larry. And that's 3 votes for Autumn. 2 votes Jim. 3 votes Larry, 3 votes Autumn, 4 votes Autumn, 3 votes Larry, and 1 vote left. And the 11th player voted out of Survivor Branford is Autumn. So she picks up 5 votes, Larry gets 3, and I got 2. So another divided vote here. So as Autumn has her torch snuffed, you might have thought Angela would be gloating in some way, but she's too smart for that. She's just going to keep a straight face, even though on the inside she's probably thrilled. Doesn't want that to come back to haunt her if she's in the final 3, might think that she could possibly salvage Autumn's vote, or at the very least try to prevent Autumn from poisoning the jury against her. So with another divided vote here, you've got to guess that some of the alliances stuck together and voted the same way, while you had those wild cards, Autumn, Brittany, and Charlie, casting yet another randomish vote. And I guess to my point earlier, perhaps this was the reason why Autumn was voted out. She was just so uncertain in the game right now, didn't really have an alliance, lost her main alliance very early and stuck it out quite well since then, but just never found her spot in this tribe, had a bit of a feud with Angela, and what went down at that circus may have been the final straw. So now let's see how the votes came in. So the 2 votes for me were both from people that I'm calling the wild cards that had no alliance. So you had Autumn and Brittany, maybe on the same page, or maybe just a coincidence decided to vote for me. And then Larry received 3 votes, and one of them came from Charlie, again, one without an alliance. And the other 2, no surprise, from Dennis and myself. This is the 3rd time now the 2 of us have voted for Larry and have yet to get him out. So much for trying to work with Larry, Rob, and Steve, just for 1 vote and then right back to our old ways. This is probably not a smart move, to be honest with you. We might have their attention again, and I expect that they might try to come for us next episode. So as far as who voted for Autumn, you have that block of 5. You have the Larry, Rob, and Steve alliance all voted for Autumn. And then you have their extended alliance with Joe and Angela also along. And I think this was win-win for a lot of them. For Angela, she got rid of her rival, and for the others, they got rid of a number who was never with them. And now with 9 left in the game, if those 5 can stick together, hey, they have the majority and they might be able to run it all the way down to the final 5. But before we speculate too much on the future, we need to get Autumn in here and give her a chance to say what she needs to, fresh after being voted out. Autumn, it can't be easy, but how are you doing?
You know, I'm so mad. Yeah, I'm bitter. So they can look forward to seeing me on the jury.
So I hope there's enough time between now and then that you're not quite as bitter as you are right now. So I felt that vote could have gone a number of different ways. Why do you think it ended up on you?
Brittany and Steve and I were just talking, throwing names out there, and then they went and told everybody what I said, so...
And then out of curiosity, just why did you vote for me?
I'm a great person, but...
Okay, well, your silence speaks volumes. But it's all good, because I'm sure that I would have eventually written your name down.
Gotta do it, man.
So Autumn, earlier in the game, you were in such a strong position, you had a great alliance, you were so solid within that group, you had an idol. I'm just interested to hear your perspective as things started to go a bit downhill from there.
I heavily relied on my alliance, and I think that was one of my downfalls that led to me getting voted out, because once my main alliance got voted out, they kind of cut my head off.
So I know it's probably a sensitive subject, but are you willing to talk about your relationship with Angela right now?
Yeah.
So you must have known coming into the game that the two of you had a complex relationship.
It always is.
Right, so ultimately it seemed like the tribe just had to make a call and go for one of you, and...
It didn't go well for me.
Yeah, exactly. You finished my sentence for me. So now with the game over for you, how would you describe that relationship?
It's just a mess.
Well, I hope that time heals all wounds and that the two of you could patch things up when she's out of the game, and maybe you guys could become the most unlikely of friends, who knows. So thanks a lot, Autumn, and we'll be seeing you soon. Okay, and let's get to episode 12. And as we start episode 12, it's becoming well known that Dennis and I tipped our hand. We voted against Larry, once again unsuccessfully. And if actions speak louder than words, it tells the Larry, Rob, and Steve alliance that we were never really looking to play nice with them. So after everyone returned back to camp, it was just the knowing look that Larry gave to me that said everything. And just the way he nodded to Rob and Steve and they nodded back told me that I was going to have a long, sleepless night, and maybe Dennis as well. So let's check out the alliances. And there's no movement. These alliances have been well established from very early in the game. Everyone is continuing to stick together, and Brittany and Charlie continue to just drift along on the outside. So let's head off to the reward challenge. And this challenge is Survivor Folklore. So this is a classic challenge in which the castaways are read a story about Cambodian history, and then from there they'll have to run from station to station answering questions about the story. If they're right, they'll get a gold medallion, but if they're wrong, they'll get a wooden medallion. And the first person to visit all 5 stations, answer all 5 questions correctly, and then have 5 gold medallions will win reward. So let's see who that is. And Rob wins the reward. Couldn't have planned this any better. When we did Survivor Folklore in Season 4, Rob also won that challenge, so appropriately enough, he wins again. And now for the first time we have an individual reward challenge as opposed to with teams, so Rob is going to select 2 members of the tribe to come along with him on reward. And he's chosen Larry and Dennis. These are always tough decisions to make. Would love to ask Rob why he made those picks. If I had to guess, he's bringing Dennis along purely out of strategy. He wants to keep Dennis and I apart at camp so that when he's gone, Dennis and I can't strategize against him with the rest of the tribe and turn them against him. So he wisely broke that up. Steve is back at camp to keep an eye on me and make sure I'm not up to any shenanigans with Angela or Brittany or Joe or Charlie. So Rob, Larry, and Dennis head off from the challenge to a local resort. They're going to have plenty of food, a shower, a bed. They're going to stay the night. So a huge challenge at this point in the game to help rejuvenate these 3. We'll see if it carries over to the immunity challenge. And the immunity challenge is the game is afoot. And this is the challenge where the castaways, while sitting down, can only use their feet to stack some blocks. They're going to stack the blocks in 3 separate circles and then plant a flag in the middle of all of that. And the first person to complete that task will win immunity. So let's see how it goes. And Joe has won immunity. Well done by him. He might not have even known he possessed these skills, but he really crushed it. Wasn't close. And Joe, who many had thought was a challenge threat, is starting to live up to that billing as he takes immunity home. So back at camp, there's not a whole lot going on. Dennis and Steve still have their idols. There's no new idol to be found. There was one awkward moment where Dennis and I found ourselves alone at camp. That's not too common. At least a few people are usually there, but not this time. The entire tribe seemed to disappear, and I knew what that meant. Hopefully Dennis does too. So everyone did come back to camp, but only right in time for tribal council. So at tribal council, the jury is introduced, and Alba, Mark, Jamin, and Autumn process in. As Autumn sits down, she gives a fantastic dirty look to the 9 remaining players in the game. So after the discussion and right before the vote, Dennis once again sits on his advantage and does not use it, so the vote proceeds as normal. And then finally, the moment we've been waiting for, and the moment that I'm surprised didn't get here a lot sooner, Dennis has played his idol. So Dennis's instincts have been spot on so far, not playing the idol. Even when things looked difficult, he was okay without playing it. We'll have to see if now is the correct time to play it. And while this is great news for Dennis, it might very well mean my end through a split vote scenario, or even if it went to a revote, I could be an easy out at that time. So let's go ahead and read the votes. And the first votes for Dennis does not count. Dennis does not count. Dennis does not count. Dennis does not count. We're having our Wentworth moment here from Survivor Cambodia, apparently. Dennis does not count. That's 5 votes red and no votes that have counted yet. Dennis does not count. Dennis does not count. Still no votes. And 1 vote for Larry. And Larry becomes the 12th player voted out of Survivor Branford. If only you could see the shocked faces among the tribe mates and the jury. And I gotta say it, the 4th time is the charm. Dennis and I came for Larry yet again, and finally, with the aid of an idol, we're able to take him out. We must have really been convinced that either he was the biggest threat in that opposing alliance, or he was just the glue to the alliance, and if you take him out of the picture, Rob and Steve won't be able to coexist. And Larry was also an important bond in the Horse Alliance, tying Rob to Joe and Angela. So if we were going to take anybody out, we probably made a great decision and possibly broke the game wide open here. And I'm also extremely surprised that the players didn't have the foresight to split the vote here. If they were confident that it was a 7 versus 2 scenario, what do you have to lose by splitting the vote? Unless there was some uncertainty around what Brittany and Charlie would do, I figured that would have been an automatic play here. But nonetheless, they don't do it and it comes back to bite them. Now of those, I think it hurts some more than others. Definitely hurts Rob and Steve, but Brittany and Charlie might not mind so much. Angela and Joe, yeah, they're probably affected, but might not be the end of the world for them. So let's see who voted for whom, although I don't think we really need to. Let's confirm our suspicions. And yep, Dennis voted for Larry, I voted for Larry. And that is the story of this tribal council. So from here I could see one of 2 scenarios. Either this vote completely opens the game up, everyone begins to think of it as an individual game, with established alliances more or less going out the window, or it could just galvanize those against Dennis and I even more, with them looking to take another shot at us the second they can. And fresh off the blind side, we have Larry with us. Really happy to talk to him. Larry, we were noticing how Dennis never played his idol and never needed to, but then decided to play it this time and once again was correct. How do you think he knew that it was time for him to play the idol?
I really thought that there was just too much talking going on and that it would have been, given the close quarters, that somebody would have figured out what was going on the other side and played the idol accordingly. So I was a little scared. Essentially, I realized what was going to happen too late.
And then what was your strategy coming into the game?
I think it's a tricky situation. I'm hoping that I've been so exceptionally mediocre that I kind of fly under the radar.
Okay, I know you gotta run. Don't want the boat to Ponderosa to leave before you can get on it. So excited to see how the rest goes down.
See what happens.
And let's keep going and take a look at episode 13. And we have our final 8, and really excited to see how things shake out now that Larry has been voted out. He was a key cog in 2 different alliances, and we'll have to see if the dynamics of the game have shifted at all now that he's been removed. So heading to the alliances, we still have our main 3 alliances, but you could see that they're slowly shrinking. Larry was in both the alliance on the top and the bottom. It seems likely that Rob and Steve will continue to work together, but whether or not that new horse alliance is impacted at all from Larry's departure remains to be seen. So let's take a look at the reward challenge. And this challenge is Jungle Love. So each of the castaways will have to dig up bags in the sand. Then they'll have to spin around a pole to retrieve another bag. Once that's done, they'll have to make their way across a balance beam, stopping halfway and collecting their final bag. Once they have all their bags, they'll use the letters inside to solve a word puzzle. And the first person to get it right wins reward. And though it won't show it for a couple screens still, I think it's important to tell you right now that this is actually the Loved Ones challenge, so maybe the biggest reward of them all so far, and all the castaways will be furiously competing to be able to spend extra time with their loved ones, and let's see who comes out on top. And Steve wins reward. Steve has been dominant in challenges. He's won 2 individual immunities, add a reward on top of that, but there are some very savvy players out there who say, this is not the reward challenge to win, strictly because you don't want to be put in the position to have to choose who's going to get to see their loved ones and who's going to go back to camp empty-handed. However, Steve does find himself in that situation, and he's going to be forced to pick 4 others to come along with him, leaving 3 back at camp. And so the 4 he chooses are Angela, myself, Brittany, and Joe. So Steve left his one and only ally back at camp, that being Rob. The only thing I could think of is that he left Rob there to babysit Dennis, make sure Dennis didn't get up to anything. Steve also didn't take Charlie, who he had a bit of a falling out with much earlier in the game when they dissolved their alliance when it was them against 4 of the original Beach Tribe. So with the loved ones, they're going to participate in a Survivor barbecue, and this is sure to be an unforgettable afternoon. Steve's wife came out to visit, and coincidentally, Joe's wife was already in Cambodia, so it was very easy for her to make the trip over here for the loved ones visit. And then in a Survivor First, Angela actually brought her dog as her loved one, and it was hilarious seeing Jeff tell Oscar the dog to come on out, and he came sprinting out of the bushes, and Angela knelt down and he jumped right into her arms. That was hilarious and will never be forgotten. And this works out well for him because he can probably handle a hamburger or a hot dog. They didn't have any dog food on hand, but Oscar should be okay nonetheless. So now it's time to head off to the next immunity challenge. And this challenge is called Overextended. So each castaway is going to balance a wooden statue on a pole, and at regular intervals, they'll add another section of pole, which will make it more difficult to keep that statue balanced. Once the statue drops, you're out of the challenge. And in this episode, there's a bit of a twist. You're going to have 2 necklaces, one for the last man and one for the last woman standing. So when they heard this news, Angela and Brittany were absolutely thrilled. With just the 2 of them as the only remaining girls in the game, they knew that they immediately had a 50-50 shot at winning immunity, while you've still got 6 guys that are going to have to battle it out in the hot sun. So now let's see how it went. And Angela wins immunity for the girls, and with no disrespect to Brittany, this might have been the easiest immunity win of all time. About 30 seconds into the challenge, a bug landed on Brittany's shoulder, and as she tried to readjust to get it off, she accidentally lost concentration, dropped the statue, and just like that, Angela won immunity. So the guys' part of the challenge went a lot longer and they were made to suffer, but someone did come out on top, and let's see who that is. And Rob wins immunity. So nice time for him to have the necklace. He saw one of his core alliance mates get voted out last episode, and once something like that happens, you just never know what's going to occur at the next tribal council. Rob didn't want to take any chances, and he won't have to. He's got the necklace now. We know we're going to be seeing him in episode 14. So after this double immunity win, let's head back to the Sangria tribe. And at camp, Steve has his idol, thinking about whether he might need it tonight or not. And nothing else really going on with the tribe. No new alliances born, or disagreements, fights, bonding moments. None of that seemed to happen here. So all we can do is just speculate on what's to go down at tribal council. If I had to guess, I'd say that Dennis and I are in big trouble. The entire tribe voted for Dennis at the last tribal council. He was able to get out of it with his idol, but unless something significant has shifted, you've still got 6 people that could potentially be on the same page against Dennis and I, maybe learning from their past mistake and splitting the vote this time. So let's head off to Tribal. And right at the end of a riveting Tribal Council, just when Jeff was saying it was time to vote, Dennis actually said, "Hang on, Jeff, no it's not." He pulled his advantage out, and he read it aloud, announcing to everyone that he had to steal a vote. Now everyone knew he had the advantage from when he very publicly won it at the challenge, but no one quite knew what was inside the advantage, and Dennis elects to steal the vote of Rob. So hitting at the member in the game who was part of 2 different alliances, Dennis said, not tonight, you will not be voting. And Rob, always stoic at Tribal Council, didn't really let on what he was feeling. Surely couldn't have been feeling great about this move, but we didn't get any flashes of anger or agitation from him. He just kind of sat there and his face was a little hard to read. So with that, everyone but Rob goes up to cast a vote, Dennis voting twice. And Steve chooses not to play his idol. Despite the fact that his one and only ally just lost his vote, Steve said, "I'm not going to need this idol tonight." So for his sake, hopefully he's right. This would be a crucial mistake for him if he were to be voted out with this idol in his pocket. So after Jeff tallies the votes, he's back and ready to read them. So the first vote's for Charlie. 2 votes Charlie. 1 vote Jim. 2 votes Charlie. 2 votes Jim. We're tied 2-2. 3 votes Charlie. 3 votes Jim. 4 votes Charlie. 1 vote left. And that gives us our first tie of the season. So in the event of a tie, the 2 people who received votes won't vote again. We'll have the other 6 go up and cast their votes. We'll see if anybody changes their mind this time around. And the rules around the steal a vote don't extend to a revote. So Rob still has lost his vote. He won't be voting, but Dennis will only be able to cast his regular own vote. So we're only going to have 5 votes here for the revote. And after Charlie and I made our pitches to the tribe, it was once again time to vote. So after the revote, the first vote is for me. 2 votes me. I thought I made a convincing argument to have the tribe keep me, but maybe not. 1 vote Charlie. 2 votes Charlie. So 2 votes Charlie, 2 votes Jim, 1 vote left. And the 13th player voted out of Survivor Branford is Charlie. 3 votes to 2. Now I am a betting man, and I would have thought that I was done here. I mean, I don't know what changed, why so many people all of a sudden wanted to go after Charlie, who seemed like an innocent bystander the last few episodes, versus me, who was right in the thick of things and going against the majority and losing. So I guess this does make it an exciting season, but it is one of the critiques I have against this simulator. Sometimes these votes don't seem to make a lot of sense. Let's take a look at who voted which way. So we're only going to get to see the original votes, the 4-4 tie, unfortunately. So in that tie, we had Dennis voting for Charlie. That makes sense. We had me voting for Charlie. That also makes sense. Now, Brittany voted for Charlie, which is, okay, maybe she is just continues to be a free agent. She's not with any alliance, and maybe she knew what the 2 plans were and just went with this one. And then Angela decided to vote for Charlie. Maybe she and I had an unaired bonding moment at the reward. Dogs do love me, and I was definitely giving Oscar a lot of attention at the reward, so maybe that struck a chord with Angela. So then the other 4 who voted against me were Charlie, obviously, and then Steve. Now here's where it gets really confusing. Joe voted for me, so he and Angela, yeah, they've been in kind of this alliance the whole time, but decide not to vote the same way here. Okay, whatever. Maybe this was intended to be a split vote, I'm not really sure. And then in maybe the most confusing vote I've ever seen, Rob's stolen vote, which Dennis cast, went against me. So my closest ally from the beginning of the game, with a very strong alliance, said, you know what? I'm going to vote my ally with this second vote. Why not? Little did he know that it forced things to go to a tie. If Dennis hadn't stolen the vote, I'm sure Rob would have voted for me anyway, so we would have been in the same place. But I would have thought that Dennis stealing the vote and the way the other votes came in would have made it a slam dunk for us against Charlie. So that's not the case. It feels like this season keeps speeding up and then slowing down back and forth, just meaning that you have one vote that key alliance member is taken out and it makes a lot of sense, and then you have a next vote where just some random person goes home. No offense, Charlie, that I'm calling you random, but you weren't in an alliance. Didn't seem to be a huge part of the game. You had your moments early when you saved yourself with an idol, and when you were able to orchestrate Alba being voted out at the merge, but you were practically silent since then. So I guess the tensions between the aligned players is going to linger just a little bit longer. And before we get to that, we'd like to talk to Charlie quick, get his thoughts on this latest vote. Charlie, congratulations on making it this far into the game.
Thank you so much. You too, by the way.
Oh, thanks. So I could tell by looking at you out there that the stress of the game was getting to you a little bit, so is there any relief to actually having been voted out?
Well, it's a good feeling.
I do understand the sentiment. Hopefully a lot of the fans at home aren't critical of you for saying that.
Oh.
So towards the middle of the game, and really until you were voted out ultimately, it was tough for you to find a steady alliance. Was there any other strategy you could have used to keep yourself in the game a bit longer?
I think in hindsight, my only other strategy could have been to try to peel off one by one for saying hey, I know you want to go to the final four, give me sign a token by voting for someone else, and then hopefully I could have done all that.
So are you worried about meeting up with Alba for the first time after you kind of got the whole tribe on board with voting her out at the merge?
I'm thinking if there wasn't already a black mark on me, there certainly is now.
Well, if you're going to do that to anyone, I think Alba was a great choice. She doesn't seem like the type that'll hold a grudge and probably will welcome you with open arms. So where do you see the game going from here, Charlie?
I think he wins our immunity challenge next time will be a really key position. So now it's what's going to happen now?
Well, really enjoyed playing with you and hope the feeling's mutual.
Had a great time.
Thanks, Charlie. So let's go on to episode 14. And we're here at episode 14, the last episode before the finale, so we're getting down to it. Let's take a look at the alliances. And predictably, nothing has changed since the last episode, with Charlie going home. That didn't really impact any of the major alliances left in the game. And right now, every player left in the game is part of an alliance, except for Brittany. So as the numbers become smaller, her vote's going to become more and more valuable to whomever she votes with. And right now, Rob might be in a pretty powerful position, being a member of two different alliances. Either can use his spot to pull the two together, or just decide to make a move with the numbers he's got in order to progress himself one step closer. So let's take a look at the reward challenge. And this challenge is called pole dancing. So in the challenge, each player is going to be attached to a rope, and what they're going to do is unspool as much rope as they think they'll need. They'll then go through an obstacle course and arrive at the final station, which is throwing sandbags at a tower of blocks. Now the tricky part is if you haven't unspooled enough rope, your progress will be halted and you'll have to go all the way back to the start and gather more rope. So ultimately the first person to knock down all of their blocks wins reward. And that's going to be Steve. And Steve continues to assert his challenge dominance. He's now got 2 reward wins to go along with his 2 immunity wins. He's in a good spot, but if he doesn't watch out, even Rob may think about turning on him, trying to blindside him with that idol. So now Steve is in a familiar position, having to choose 2 people to come with him on reward. And he's chosen Angela and Joe. So let's break down that decision. He's taking Angela and Joe, who in their own right are a 2-person block. So not a bad move for Steve to try to get in with them. He knows his ally Rob is in with them, but this is his own chance to do some bonding. So he leaves Rob at camp with Dennis and I, along with Brittany. And if Rob was ever thinking of a move, now could be a chance to do it, gathering up those numbers. And Steve, Angela, and Joe are going to have a once-in-a-lifetime trip to the temples of Siem Reap. They're going to enjoy some local Cambodian food and spend the night in the temples. So for those who play Survivor for the adventure and for the travel aspects, this is a reward for you. So let's now head off to the immunity challenge. And this challenge is Flotsam and Jetsam. So the castaways will start on the beach. They'll then race out into the water and across a bunch of obstacles. Once they reach the end of the obstacles, they'll have to jump into the water, swim a short distance, and retrieve a key. From there, they'll race back across the obstacles into the beach, use the key to unlock a chest of puzzle pieces, and then the first person to assemble their puzzle correctly wins immunity. So this puzzle is the classic 5-piece puzzle. It's designed to make a pyramid, and this puzzle, despite the small number of pieces, can be exceedingly difficult. It's one of those puzzles that either you're going to solve in 10 seconds, or it's going to take you all day. So let's see who wins this very important immunity challenge. And Angela's taking immunity home. That's her 2nd win in a row. Now every season on Survivor, it seems like there's that one challenge in which there's a gigantic comeback. And this is the one in our season that this happened. Angela, not known for her prowess in the water, was way behind, gave everyone a several minute start on the puzzle, but like I said before, this puzzle could take 10 seconds or all day, and Angela fell into the former category. She came back and just saw it in her head and put those puzzle pieces together, and it was over just like that. So in arriving to the challenge, Angela took one look at it and thought maybe she'd be sitting this one out just because it was very dominated by water elements, but she ended up going for it, and look who's got immunity now. So now we'll see how her win affects the tribe events. And back at Sangria, Steve still has his idol. He needs to remember that the last time he could play it is at the final 5. So right now, being at the final 7, he still has a few opportunities to use it. Right now, he might feel comfortable. However, it's right when you start to feel too comfortable that the blind side happens, so he's going to have to be thinking about that in the back of his head. And Angela's just been on a roll lately, as now her social game is really starting to take off around camp. She's just been a ray of sunshine today, as she's won her 2nd straight immunity challenge and is feeling great. She's also been on back-to-back rewards and is feeling well fed. Just having that recent time with Oscar has reminded her that she's almost at the end of this and she can see the light at the end of the tunnel. And you've also got to remember that enough time has passed between when Autumn got voted out and now, so Angela's been able to put that whole saga behind her, and overall she's just in a great frame of mind right now. So back at camp, she was just in a great mood, had everyone laughing and smiling, and no one thinking about voting her out right now. And with that, it's time for Tribal Council. So after this vote, the jury will outnumber the players left in the game, so we're at a big turning point right now. Another great tribal discussion. Jeff always does a great job moderating, just always asks the right questions, knows who to go to for specific issues, and after a lively discussion, it's once again time to vote. And as we head into the vote, we have to consider what's about to happen here. Dennis and I are still hanging around, even though at least I've viewed us as being in the minority. It seems like every other episode, people might be coming for us, so given this is an even-numbered episode, that might be the case. Potentially the reward crew of Steve, Joe, and Angela could have bonded and are looking to be on the same page here. Rob's always right in the thick of things. And then let's not forget about Brittany, flying under the radar. Could make her a target if the mindset of the tribe is consistent from last time, or she might really swing things here. So when the time comes, Steve does not play his idol. I feel that's a good move, but let's read the votes and see. The first vote's for Dennis. 2 votes Dennis. 1 vote Jim. 2 votes Dennis. 2 votes Jim. 3 votes Dennis. And the 14th player voted out of Survivor Branford is Dennis. So the alliance of Dennis and myself, we really did have a fairy tale run despite being outnumbered for a great portion of the game, and it finally caught up with us here. Dennis having no more protection, having spent his idol earlier, and playing his steal a vote at the last tribal council. The two of us just had to rely on our relationships with all the others, but this time that was not enough. So Dennis with another deep run into the game, adding to his very impressive overall resume for Survivor Branford, and with him out, one of the main antagonists to Rob and Steve, you gotta think that those two are in firm control right now. Don't get me wrong, Joe and Angela will have a say in how this season ends up, but from what we're being told, Rob and Steve do have the strongest relationship left in the game. And with this vote, I'm pretty much on even footing with Brittany in that we have no alliance. Do we form an alliance together now? Or do we just try to latch on to something that's already formed? But I will say, going into the finale, you could probably make a case for any of the remaining 6 to win this game. So before we get there, let's see how the votes went. So it was 5 votes for Dennis and 2 votes for me. And this seems to be a pretty classic vote split, so everyone wised up this time and didn't want a repeat of the last time when Larry got idled out of the game. So luckily for me, I had positioned Dennis as a bigger threat, so they went after him first. And coming into Tribal and just the way that it went, even Dennis and I knew that the jig was up, and we just threw our votes on each other and wished each other the best and awaited our fate. So before we get to that much awaited finale, we can't forget about Dennis here. Dennis, we tried so many things, but just at the end had no more magic left.
I don't think we had any more luck.
So tell me what your thoughts are coming out of that vote. I presume the others were telling you it was going to be me.
So I'll say I completely disagree with this vote.
Turns out the joke was on me.
Well played to all of you to deceiving me there at the end.
So one thing that I still don't understand was how you decided to play the steal a vote. Care to give some detail?
I mean, maybe I probably should have played it better. I thought it would be fun, would shake things up.
Well, it almost shook things up enough where I got voted out of the game, thanks very much. And now you know everyone left in the game pretty well. Where do you see things going from here?
It seems like things are continuing to be kind of straightforward, which in some ways I find to be a little boring. I wish there was a little more mix-up.
And then I know you'll take your responsibility as a juror very seriously. What's your mindset there?
I'm going to have to think long and hard about who I'll vote for, who actually played the best game. It will be an interesting vote to see what I decide to do.
Okay, and any final thoughts you want to leave us with before you head out?
I'm super excited, feel super fortunate to be at the final 7.
Thanks, Dennis. Hope you had a good time.
It was fun.
And ladies and gentlemen, we have made it to the finale. Let's go. So the beginning of the finale equates to about day 36 in the game, and this is where things really start to move quickly. Reward challenges are no more. 3 people will be voted out over the next 3 days until we have our final 3 on day 39. So the gameplay is sure to be intense and to run at a breakneck pace. Now let's see where things stand heading in. So just as we left off in episode 14, we now have the original Rice Alliance of Rob and Steve continuing to be very strong and very loyal to each other. And then we have the second alliance from the New Horse Tribe, consisting of Angela, Joe, and Rob. They've been working together on and off. Angela and Joe have been working together more consistently than Rob has, but he is still in this alliance. And then Brittany and I are on the outside looking in, and I'm interested to know what we're thinking and how are we going to try to make inroads with this group. So right away we're going to head off to the immunity challenge. And this challenge is Step On Up. So each of the castaways will have to collect a series of puzzle steps, and those steps will have to be placed in order from bottom to top. There's only one spot each step can go, so it is a bit of a puzzle to construct your staircase. Once you get to the top of the staircase, you'll have to complete a slide puzzle, and the first person to finish their puzzle wins immunity. So the one and only time in Survivor Branford that we did a slide puzzle, Rob emerged victorious. Will he repeat his success here? Not this time, and Joe wins immunity. So Joe with his second immunity win, maybe has wisely held back in challenges until now when it's really crucial to have immunity. Joe may not have wanted to put a target on his back so early in the merge when individual immunity challenges began, so we'll have to see if this is just a one-off win or the beginning of something for him. So going back to the tribe, Steve has the idol for Sangria. He can play it now, or he can still play at the next tribal council when there's 5 people left. He and Rob continue to hold strong. But look at this, we finally have a new development in the game. So I've been able to get in with Angela and Joe. They've seemingly abandoned Rob at this point, left Rob to align solely with Steve. And now I'm in this group, and we're also being touted as a very strong alliance. We each have a 9 loyalty to each other. This has seemingly come out of nowhere, but maybe the groundwork has been laid in episodes past. Now knowing how vulnerable I am, Angela and Joe were willing to scoop me up and bring me in as a number. And if this group is for real, we now hold half of the votes in the tribe. This would force Steve and Rob to have to bring Brittany in just to tie things up. And Brittany has been such a wild card this whole game. We've never really known where she stands, seems to have voted at least once with everybody in the game, and also against everybody at least once. So we could be headed for a showdown here at Tribal Council. And coming into Tribal Council with the final 6, there's a lot of tension in the air. The jury was very attentive and paid attention to everything that was said, taking the tiniest of details into account for how they're going to cast their votes in the end. And once everybody had said all they needed to, it was time to vote. And Steve decided now was the time to play his idol. So he could have played it now, he could have played it next time, potentially thinking ahead. Maybe he likes his chances to win the next immunity challenge, so right now when he's not safe could have been a good time for him. He knows he's in tight with Rob, but beyond that, for all he knows, the other 4 could have gotten together against him. So he's taking no chances, Steve ensuring himself extra life in the game, and now all that's left to do is read those votes. So the first vote's for Steve, and that does not count. Second vote's for Jim. Third vote's for Jim, so 2 votes for me. 1 vote Brittany. 2 votes Brittany, so 2 votes Brittany, 2 votes Jim, and 1 vote left. And the 15th person voted out of Survivor Branford is Brittany. So Brittany makes it all the way to the final 6. Played a great fly under the radar game. Just eventually ran out of fuel here at the end. Seems like the other 5 all had their spots in this tribe, and she was just kind of the odd person out. And I think with this vote, the lines may have been drawn. There were 3 different people who received votes, yet only 6 players in the game, so it was quite divided. Let's see how the votes went. Wow, so I think this marks the beginning of a power shift in this game. So voting for Brittany were Angela, Joe, and myself. So that new alliance that seemingly came out of nowhere, but came out very strong, all voted together, took the majority, and sent Brittany home. Now our thinking must have been that Rob and Steve were bigger threats, but with fear of an idol out there, we might have wanted to take the sure thing, vote Brittany out, and then take the majority of the now 5-person tribe. And that could have been a smart move, as Steve did play his idol, so going after him would have amounted to nothing. Brittany was the one vote for Steve, and as we can see, she was still just kind of left out, voted however she saw fit. And then finally Rob and Steve stuck together and voted for me. For once, and they're not used to being in this position, the way that they voted was not the majority. I think they were both a little surprised at this, Rob especially, as he thought he had a good working relationship with Joe and Angela. Steve now questioning why he took Joe and Angela to the temple if they're not going to even vote along with him. He thought they all had a solid plan coming in. Everyone had seemed on board with finishing their business of getting rid of the last member of that rival alliance. But then Joe and Angela said, nope, we have different ideas for this vote. And they executed. They got me to come in, who really had no choice. And I think we're set up for a dynamic final 5 here. Have Joe and Angela burn those bridges with Rob and Steve? Are these 2 groups of 2 now clearly against each other? Am I suddenly the swing vote after being left for dead after the last tribal council? So those questions, plus who wins the next immunity challenge, is going to play a huge part in this game. Steve's idol's been burned. Not sure if it's going to go back into hiding for the final round it could be played. And we just have so many questions left to address here. So the finale off to a great start. But before we go any further, let's get Brittany in here. So Brittany, I've been saying for a while now, it seemed like you really weren't working with anybody. Is that how you saw it in the game as well?
Didn't have a very strong alliance with anyone.
Okay, thanks for confirming. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. I think it could be a viable strategy.
I think that's a fair play too.
And it was something that was able to take you to the final 6 in the game, but wasn't able to get you any further than that.
Unfortunately.
So despite not having an alliance with anyone, did you feel close to any of the other people in the game?
Obviously you. That's a compliment.
Well, thanks very much, and I still really do appreciate all the way back when you won us those vegetables during the Hero Challenge. I sorely needed the nourishment. And then any words on that last vote?
They just kept voting for me, just to simplify things. So it worked out for them.
Right. Well, I'm sorry that you couldn't make it further, and I know you gotta run. We have the live reunion coming up very shortly, so I know you need to go get ready for that.
Cool.
Okay, let's not waste any time and continue on through the finale. And we have 5 left standing, coming off of maybe one of the most pivotal tribal councils of the game. Joe and Angela appear to have broken away from Rob and Steve, and working with me in that last vote, and if they'd like to continue that, now stand in the majority. I think at the final 5 it's always an option to vote out the swing vote, but I just don't see Angela and Joe getting back together with Rob and Steve here. I feel like that ship has sailed after the events of the last tribal council, so maybe I actually hold a lot of the power here in deciding if I want to continue to work with Angela and Joe, or if I'd like to swing over with Rob and Steve this vote. It might come down to who I view as a bigger threat in front of the jury. So with that said, let's see the visual representation of that explanation. And here we go, 2 alliances, 2 very strong alliances opposing each other, no one else left to target at this point. So now it might just become a matter of each side determining who they think they'd like to go for at the next vote. So we'll take a look at the immunity challenge. And the challenge is Giant Tick. So all of the castaways will be put into a gigantic obstacle course, so they'll race around each of 6 stations collecting a bag of puzzle pieces at each. Once they have all their bags and have returned to the starting point, they'll assemble the puzzle, and the first to complete it wins immunity. So with so much on the line, and after a tightly contested challenge, Joe has once again won immunity. So his 3rd win of the season, starting to flex those challenge muscles now. Jeff wasn't kidding when he said Joe was extremely fit. He's starting to show it. As I suspected, he might have been sandbagging a little earlier, just so that he didn't stand out as a threat. But now in crunch time, he's going all out at these challenges. So for his side, it's great news that Joe's won immunity. It leaves both Rob and Steve open, so there are still some options to explore. And for Rob and Steve, it takes Joe off the table, but they could either go after Angela or go after me. And going after me could be in the sense of voting for me or trying to woo me and pull me over to their side. So we'll head off back to camp, and there's no idol hidden, so that clears up a question from the last episode in which Steve played his idol. There was still one more round here at the Final 5 that idols could have been played. However, it never even went back into hiding, so we're done with idols for the season, and we had some hits and some misses with those, but I'm glad we saw numerous people get to find one. But then in the lead up to Tribal Council, Joe and Rob have a minor fight, their second minor fight of the season. This one may be a little more out of frustration. Rob, kind of knowing he's in between a rock and a hard place for the next vote, was giving 110% at that immunity challenge, and several times as he and Joe ran past each other in the obstacles, there was some unintentional bumping, with Rob getting knocked to the ground on one occasion. During the heat of the challenge, he didn't think much of it, just picked himself up and continued, but when he got back to camp without the necklace and was thinking about that, he told Joe that he didn't quite respect the way that he played that challenge, thought he wasn't being a very good sport, and Joe, with most of the power in the game right now, just brushed that comment off, dismissed Rob as being a sore loser, and went on. So I don't know if this fight will really change much, but if Joe and Angela and me by association were trying to think of who the votes might get put on, it's possible they're leaning just a little bit more towards Rob now. So after a tribal council, which seemed to be very by the book here, not a lot of outrageous moments or new information revealed, the castaways go up to vote, and with no hidden immunity idols even possible to be played here, let's get right into reading those votes. First votes for Jim, 1 vote Rob, 2 votes Rob, 2 votes Jim, 1 vote left. And the 16th person voted out of Survivor Branford is Rob. So Rob with another deep run in Survivor. Despite finishing 5th place, I'm sure he's disappointed, both in this virtual reality, and if he was viewing this at home, I'm sure he was rooting that he would go all the way, but comes up just a little bit short here. So we'll see who voted which way in a minute, but I think it's pretty fair to conclude that Rob and Steve voted for me, and that the other 3 voted for Rob. So that kind of leaves Steve on the outs right now. I think there's only 2 possible things that could happen in the next vote to keep Steve in the game. Either 1, he wins immunity, or 2, he's able to get both Angela and Joe back to his side to vote me out. Steve could be desperate and try to pull me in to force a 2-2 tie, but from my standpoint, I don't see why that would make a lot of sense if I could just stay with the majority and vote Steve out. So that's what I guess we're looking forward to. Let's get confirmation of the votes. And it was as we expected. The 3 that had voted together last time for Brittany stick together and vote out Rob. Rob and Steve vote against me in a losing effort. And I'm suddenly thinking all the way back to the tribal council where Larry got voted out. At the time, it seemed like Rob and Steve could have recovered after that, but that might have been the beginning of the end for them. I think it's underreported how important Larry was in the game. He was also in that horse alliance with Angela and Joe, and was helping to keep everyone together. But once he left, that caused Angela and Joe to start having other ideas besides that alliance. You have to think if Larry stayed in the game, that foursome may have stayed strong, got rid of all the opposition, and could have possibly even been the final 4. So it all comes down to the fact that everyone there put their vote on Dennis, didn't think to split the vote, and it came back to haunt them. And Rob might be thinking of that missed opportunity for a while now, as he proves to be a casualty of that several episodes later. So I'm anxious to get Rob in here and see how he's taking that last vote. Rob, long time no talk.
It just had to be you.
No, I've been interviewing everyone as they came out of the game. I'm not doing this just to torture you here.
Yeah, you see that now.
No, really, ask any of the other players. I've talked to all of them as well right when they came out.
Oh, interesting.
So Rob, another good run for you here in this season.
Generally, I've done pretty well. Been close.
You have, and it's only going to be a matter of time before you can break through and reach the final 3. So I'm curious to know if this was a blindside for you, or if you could feel the tides turning a little bit beginning at the last vote.
So we kind of had a hunch. I think I had sort of said it while I was voting that like, oh, I hope this goes the way we think it's going to go.
And so from what I observed at Tribal, it seemed like you and Steve still thought you had a fighting chance here. What were the conversations with Joe and Angela like in the lead up?
The offer they're trying to make us is to go for you. That's how they're playing it.
Got it. So they said that they'd vote with you guys for me, which makes sense. What else are they going to tell you? So your departure leaves Steve alone in the game.
He was upset, isn't he?
Well, time will tell. I still have to go back to camp with him and hopefully be able to smooth things over. So in the game, you had a lot of success working with a variety of people, and usually sitting in the majority. What was your basic strategy that allowed all that to happen?
That's what we said we were going to do, was we were going to tell everybody possible that we're going along with whatever they're saying, and we weren't going to do that.
And now with only 4 left, any rooting interest for who you're hoping makes it to the end?
Doesn't matter to me.
I see. Well, despite that, I'm sure you'll still make an excellent addition to the jury, and hoping you enjoyed your 37 days here.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Alright, let's get one step closer to the end of the game. So we've come so far. We only have 4 players left now in the game from the original 20 that started, and all the players left in the game can realistically start thinking for the first time about how they would want to spend the $1 million if they were to win. So as far as Survivor goes, this may be one of the most cut and dry situations you could imagine for the Final 4. We have this new alliance containing Angela, myself, and Joe, which has taken control of the game over the last couple of votes. And then within that, there's a sub-alliance of Angela and Joe, which shouldn't come as a surprise. They've been working closely for a long time now, and you'd have to think that if push came to shove, those two would still get together and band against me. So that leaves Steve on the outside. You wonder if immunity is his only shot at staying in the game, or if he could potentially get that group of Angela and Joe to come over against me. So as long as Angela and Joe stay together, they might be an important swing vote, or swing votes, at this Final 4. So there's no immunity challenge more important than that at the Final 4, so let's head off to it. And the Final 4 immunity challenge is Simotion. So this is the challenge where the castaways have one hand tied behind their back, and they'll have to take a ball and drop it into this track-like device, and then catch the ball when it comes out at the bottom. And at regular intervals, they'll have to add another and another ball so that they're all going at once, making sure never to drop a ball on the ground. So off the top of my head, I could think of 3 times this challenge was run, one in Survivor Tocantins, one in Survivor Cambodia, obviously, and then one in David versus Goliath. And in each instance, the person who won that challenge went on to win the game. So let's see if that's going to be a similar trend here. And with so much on the line, here we go. And Steve, with his back against the wall, knowing this was probably his only shot, wins immunity. He was great in this challenge. He did the math in his head and was able to accurately space out all of the balls on the track. Never took his eyes off of it. Didn't let it bother him that Angela and myself were rooting for Joe once the two of us were out of the challenge. But in the end, Joe faltered and Steve wins immunity, and he is going to the Final 3. Congrats, Steve. This is his second appearance in the Final 3, and this must represent a worst-case scenario for myself, Angela, and Joe. So now let's see what happens back at camp. So we're being told that no significant events occurred. I have to imagine that each of the 3 of us went off and had one-on-one conversations with Steve about why he'd want to come with each of us to the Final 3. And then Angela had her own conversation with Joe and one with me. And then, of course, I talked with Joe. So all the options are out there. All the combinations got together. And I'm glad this is Survivor Cambodia because we have a true vote at the Final 4. We don't have that forced fire-making challenge, which I'm not a fan of at all, at the Final 4. So in this round of voting, the game will continue to be played the way the game is meant to be played. No free rides here. So let's go into Tribal Council. And as the jury came in and turned to look at the Final 4 to see who had won immunity, there were quite a few different reactions. Of course, you had some smiling, very happy to see Steve had won the immunity challenge, and knowing that the potentially smug group of Angela, Joe, and myself would be no more after this vote. And then there were some that were maybe a little disappointed, were relishing this being the time Steve would go out of the game, but that will not be happening here. So the Final 4 discussion was standard fare. Everybody talked about why they thought they should be going to the end, and potentially why some of the others should not be. And with nothing else left to say, each of the castaways went up to vote. So Jeff came back with the urn and got right into it. No need to ask for immunity idols. So let's go ahead and see who's only going to make it 38 out of the 39 days. First vote's for Angela. Second vote is for me. Oh man, third vote is for Joe, so 1 for each of us. And this next vote will decide it. So the 17th player voted out. And the final member of the jury is Joe. And it only takes 2 votes here. So first off the good, Joe has had his best showing by far in a season. Makes it just 1 step short of Final Tribal. Might have only been an immunity challenge away from winning the game. If he won the challenge, it was very likely Steve would be going out, and then Joe might have stood as good a chance as any in the Final 3. But he's just going to have to settle for these what-ifs. he can take some consolation in the fact that he received a round of applause after he was voted out, and he promised he'd be back the next night, and then took off down the path into the darkness. So seeing how the votes were divided, I can't really predict how people voted, so let's just go ahead and take a look. So this was unpredictable. Voting for Joe, and all it really took this time was Angela and myself. So although Angela was tighter with Joe than with me, I think she must have just realized that of Joe and myself, Joe was the bigger threat at Final Tribal, having won a variety of challenges and made good relationships and alliances throughout the game, had an idol at one point. So that opportunity that Angela and I got to talk together really proved to be the deciding conversation for how this vote went down. Angela had Joe hoodwinked into thinking that she was also voting for me, so he put his vote there. And then Steve. So usually you see the person with immunity at the Final Four wielding a great deal of power, where they pretty much drive how the vote's going to go. Steve went after Angela. No one else did. So I'm sure we all knew of his plan to do that, but none of us were really buying. And Angela had all the cards now that I think about it. She knew where each of the other 3 people was voting, so it was solely up to her. And she did what she thought was best. So we have a final 3 of Angela, Steve, and myself, which I'm really looking forward to breaking down soon. And I'll just say, just as a disclaimer for all the haters out there, I simply pressed the simulate button and here we are. So I didn't purposely arrange that I'd be in the final 3. Honestly, I wouldn't have minded at all going out early in this simulation, but there was a 15% chance and it came through this time. So enough with that. We have to steal a few words from Joe before he heads out with the rest of the jury. So how's it going, Joe?
Jim, I gotta tell you, it's not good to be back.
I hope that's not a slight at me and just your take on the current situation. So what are you feeling right now?
So obviously I'm disappointed. Obviously it's frustrating. I hate tribal councils.
So that vote must have been a tough pill to swallow. Do you feel betrayed by anyone in particular?
Easy peasy, Jim.
Angela, she's obvious for me.
So what was it about Angela that made you want to align with her? You guys were a strong duo for most of the season, and it definitely shaped how a lot of things developed in the game.
I thought she would be a good teammate, but I didn't necessarily find her threatening.
So I definitely appreciate that you pulled me in at the last minute to kind of save me and also give me some power in the game, but why did it take so long for that to happen, you think?
We didn't want to really bring in someone else into the foray. The phrase I've been throwing around is too many cooks in the kitchen. So,
well, I do fancy myself as a good cook, but I'm sure that's not what you meant. So, Joe, you really turned it on in those last few immunity challenges, huh?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing.
No, not bad at all. I think that you played it right in going easy those first few challenges and then really winning them when you had to towards the end. How were you able to get in that mindset?
Winning a challenge just is so much weight off your shoulders, yeah.
Okay, and who are you pulling for in the final 3?
I couldn't care less.
No, not even me? Okay, well then what do you think's going to happen?
Not so sure.
Alright, Joe, well I'll let you get going, and it won't be too long until we see each other again. So from here, all that's left to do is cover Day 39 and the final Tribal Council. So shortly after sunrise on Day 39, Angela, Steve, and I all went to get tree mail together as a group, and we found a great breakfast waiting for us. There was plenty of fruit, there were eggs, there was bacon, pancake batter, orange juice, champagne. So we took it all back to camp and had a great time. And it was nice for us because we could put the game aside for once. We didn't have to actively strategize against each other. And really, each of our days would just be preparing for what was to come at Final Tribal Council, getting our thoughts together and preparing to answer questions we think could be asked. So after we enjoyed breakfast, we transitioned to scenes of each of the 3 of us giving emotional confessionals right before Tribal Council, just about our journeys and our growth stories, and how winning the money would change our lives. And there was a little bit of debate over whether we should burn down the camp or not, but ultimately we didn't, and I kind of like that decision. I never really enjoyed when the tribe burnt down their camp at the end of the game, so even though we continued to maintain our terrible little shelter that we never got upgraded, it was spared in the end. So now at Tribal Council, the final 3 faces the jury, and one by one they walk in. Alba, Mark, Jamin, Autumn, Larry, Charlie, Dennis, Brittany, Rob, and Joe voted out at the last Tribal Council. And that was a mouthful. These 10-person juries are quite large. So in the format of Survivor Cambodia, we were still under the old jury system in which each juror would come up one at a time and ask a question. So predictably, Rob and Larry were fully supporting Steve here. You had Joe being tough but ultimately fair on Angela. Autumn focused almost all of her time talking to Angela. And I know in watching some final tribals from the past, you see maybe sometimes that third person that doesn't really get a lot of questions or attention from the jury, and I felt like I was living a nightmare as a lot of the questions just went around me. To the other two, nobody really had a whole lot to say to me. Dennis asked me a question or two about my gameplay after he was voted out, but nothing major, so I really tried to kill it in both my opening statement and closing remarks. So my closing argument focused around just the fact that I got into an alliance, but I was still outnumbered from the get-go. I swapped into a fortuitous situation in which I was in the majority, but then found myself right back at the bottom at the merge. Hung in there a few votes when my number could have been up, and then when I needed to, got in with Angela and Joe, and was able to make it all the way to the final three. Angela's story was one of not wanting to come out of the gate too hard, too fast. She admitted that she wasn't in an alliance in her first tribe by design. She didn't want to stick out too much, felt that she'd be safer going that route, and then once the swap happened and the numbers got a little tighter, she was able to form good relationships with her tribe mates that carried her throughout the game. She talked about how she won 2 immunities, how she was the last female player left standing in a male-dominated endgame, and then took a moment to apologize to Autumn and express her desire to be friends after the game. And then Steve talked about how he thought he played a complete game. He was in power for much of the time. Thought one of his proudest moments was when his vote and his vote alone got Danielle out and really hit at the core alliance on the other tribe. He mentioned that he did what he had to in the challenges to survive the swap. Then at the merge got right back into control, won several challenges, found an idol, and then when things got dicey, was able to pull it out and win the final immunity challenge and willed himself to get to this point. So with everyone having wrapped up their statements, each of the jurors went off to vote, some returning almost immediately, but there were a couple who were really deliberating over there and thinking carefully about their vote. Maybe some minds were changed during final tribal council. So Jeff went to get the votes, came back, thanked everyone for a great season, and then took off with the urn. So all of us were left to wait months and months until this moment right here. Now we're all sitting on the stage. Jeff has just come out to a gigantic ovation from the live studio audience. He's reminded us, not that we've needed reminding, but he's reminded us that we're looking to see our names here. And with that, he's ready to go. So the first vote's for Steve, and 1 vote for me, and 1 vote for Angela. So glad to see that there's not going to be a 0 vote finalist here. 2 votes Angela, 1 vote for Steve and myself. 2 votes Steve. That's 3 votes Steve, 2 votes Angela, 1 vote Jim. And now 4 votes Steve, and he's starting to feel it. And the winner of Survivor Branford, Steve. So Steve stands up, gives Angela a hug, gives me a hug. The crowd's going crazy. The jury is applauding Steve, and he rushes down to see his family. His wife is here, his parents, all 3 of his sisters. And this is yet another accomplishment for Steve, one of many for someone as young as he is. And finally, the pre-jury comes out from backstage, gives everyone congratulations as we got ready to wrap things up. So during the reunion show, we got to see how each of the jurors voted. So voting for Angela were Jamin, and Autumn actually voted for Angela. So nice ending to their story. They were able to bury the hatchet, put aside their differences, and Autumn let her actions speak louder than words in casting that vote. And Angela was touched to learn that she did receive Autumn's vote. So we spent a segment of the reunion talking about that relationship, and they both said that they had plans to go out and grab dinner the next night before heading home. So what a great end to that story. And then the only vote I got was from Brittany, so I thank her for that. #VegetableAlliance. And I was a little disappointed to learn that Dennis didn't vote for me. He told me not to take it personally and said that he based his vote on pure strategy, and he thought that Steve played the overall best game out of everyone. And then Steve got all the other votes. He got his core alliance of Larry and Rob. He got the other member of my core alliance, which was Mark. I was very disappointed in that. I thought loyalty was the name of Mark's game, but I guess it doesn't extend to a jury vote. And then we spent a few minutes talking to Joe, and he said that in the moment he just still wasn't over having been betrayed, mostly by Angela at the previous vote, so he voted for Steve. All those months later, though, he said it was behind him and he had no problems with Angela now, and if he could vote now, he'd vote for her, but it just wasn't the way he was feeling at the time out in Cambodia. So congratulations to Steve, a well-deserved win, and I'm extremely thrilled with the way the simulation came out. I thought it allowed me to present a nice story that wasn't too complicated to tell, and I do apologize to those who were out of the game early and might not have been the subject of much discussion here. But I'm sure if I were to do another of these, the roles would be reversed and it'll then be those people's time in the spotlight. So before we go, we just have a couple other things to get to. We have a fan favorite for the season, so voting was open to the audience during the season, and the winner of that would receive a $10,000 cash prize. So before we show who the fan favorite is, take a moment and think about who you would have voted for as the fan favorite. And then so the winner was revealed, and it was Mark Spong was the fan favorite of the season. It was explained that he really connected with the audience and being so emotional and vulnerable in that moment when Meredith got medevaced at his hands. He played a game of honor and loyalty and integrity, which is what he set out to do. He gave some humorous confessionals along the way, and then it probably helped. And I don't know if he was playing for fan favorite votes at this time, but right after the episode where Meredith got medevaced, Mark tweeted out a picture of him visiting Meredith at the hospital, and that garnered a lot of goodwill towards him. So congratulations, Mark. You were out soon after the merge, but you still have something to be very proud of here. So we get a season summary now, and we can see how everyone finished from 1st all the way down to 20th. It summarizes the votes for the tribal council where each person went out, and you'll notice the little red asterisks with the number crossed out. That just denotes there was an idol played. So if you look at Larry, for instance, you see it says a 7-2 vote, but the 7 is crossed out because Dennis played the idol, negating all of those votes. So really, Larry just went home with 2 votes. And then we have our pre-jury, so let me just give a shout out to all of them since, as I said before, they weren't a heavy focus of the season, unfortunately. So we have Mare, Amanda, Meredith, Danielle, Kyle, Sam, and Mark Sayer. So the final thing we have here to look at are just some random stats. So for total challenge wins on the season, you had Steve and Joe tied atop the leaderboard, with Steve also on top for reward wins and immunity wins. Angela had the most immunity wins for a female, actually the only female to win immunity this season now that I'm looking at it. We have a cool little list here of the votes received, so Larry tops that with 14 votes received on the season. And now that I think about it, it's not a total shock because Dennis and I went after him 4 separate times, sometimes with others on our side, sometimes not, but it did add up. I got 13 votes myself, and then you could see the list go down from there. Elba got 10 votes, but all 10 of them were at the same tribal council. And then on the bottom, from like Mare all the way down to Danielle, none of them received an eye-popping number of votes, yet for each of those players it was enough to do them in. And then finally, you have what looks to be here like a subjective list of the most strategic players of the season, with Charlie taking home top honors there. I guess the way that he influenced the merge vote for Alba, along with when he played his idol, when Danielle went home, were enough to land him atop this list. Oh, and I think I see Angela over there on the red carpet. Let's see if we could grab her for a few questions. Angela, hey.
Hey, Jim.
So 2nd place, not too bad. How are you feeling about that?
I'm just so sad.
Oh, so sorry to hear that. Did you think going into the vote you had a great shot to win the game?
Yeah.
Before the votes were read, how many would you have predicted Steve would get?
None.
Alright, well, enough with that. Let's think about where we are right now. I mean, look at us. We're on the red carpet under the bright lights. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Don't lose sight of that.
This is amazing. Beautiful.
And geez, I think this season, Oscar was more popular than half the cast, including me. So I think right now it's just all about putting things in perspective and having as good a time as you can.
I feel better now.
So why don't you tell me a little bit about the game from your eyes?
Prompt me. I need prompts. I need questions. Please talk to me.
Okay, sure. So how did it feel sitting up there on the stage with America watching as Jeff revealed the votes, and you were just a few away from being named the winner of the season?
I don't know. That was a terrifying tribal council.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, but I was a lot less scared because I only got a single vote and I probably didn't stand much of a chance.
Poor Jim.
So if you put yourself back in your shoes on day one, what were you thinking as you were on the boat getting ready for the marooning?
That's a good question. You know, I haven't thought too much about it. My only goal is not getting voted out first, as always.
Well, you beat that goal by a mile. And did you know that you actually finished second in the fan favorite voting for the season?
Wow. Jim, why does this happen to me?
Oh, I meant that as a positive. Didn't mean to strike a nerve, but I could see how that could be frustrating for you. So Angela, you got votes at most of the tribal councils you went to. What would you attribute that to?
Just too big of a threat because I'm too good at this game, probably, I think is the problem. That was not true at all. Sorry, that was really arrogant. I didn't mean it. I'm terrible.
So all kidding aside, a big deal was made this season about the vote where Larry went home, when Dennis pulled an idol. What did you think about that particular moment in the game?
I don't think that vote mattered that much. I think that was kind of like, whatever.
I'm trying to think of all the facts I know that I can tell you.
Oh, I guess I'm a little surprised to hear you say that, but it does make sense as you did make it to the end of the game without him being around. So self-assessment, do you feel you came out of the game better off than when you went in?
Physically, emotionally, mentally.
Oh, glad to hear that. It sounds like it had a positive impact in many different ways for you. Hey, so a bunch of us are going to go over to the after party once we're done here.
I think I am too.
Great, I'm sure we'll get to talk more there. Oh, and have you seen Steve? I've been looking for him, hoping to grab him just for a couple words before we head out.
I don't even know. Steve's all over the place.
Yeah, I know, the winner's a popular guy, and everyone probably wants a piece of him right now, but us losing finalists can commiserate together. So Angela, great job again this season, and talk to you soon.
Thank you so much.
And just as I was wrapping up with Angela, this guy stopped over. So Steve, congratulations on your win. How are you feeling right now?
I'm shocked.
Yeah, I bet it's going to take a little bit of time to sink in. So why don't you expand on that just a little bit?
Well, I am shocked I made it this far. Not really sure if I would have made it this far or not if I didn't get the immunity at the very end.
It's true, your concentration in that challenge, keeping all the balls on the track, was unmatched, and you deserved the win and to win the game as well. Do you think it was really your neck on the line if you didn't win that challenge?
I think so.
Yeah, I think you're right. Angela and Joe were pretty much ready to pull the trigger on that had you not won. So if you ended up on the jury instead, which way do you think you would have been voting?
I hadn't even considered that. It's hard to know for sure.
Well, even so, I'm sure it wouldn't have made the difference for me to win the game, so don't worry about that. So coming into the game, I know that you were pretty down on your chances to win. You actually likened it to a math theorem of some sort. So what would you say now, having had the success you did in the game?
So the great thing about continuous probability and almost surely is that even events with a probability of 1 can possibly not happen.
Well, I'll take your word for it. And I don't want to put a damper on this celebration, but I know that there are some that aren't as happy that you won this season.
Oh, what did you hear?
Oh, you know, every season you get those fans that aren't too happy with the winner and wish someone else would have won instead.
I'm sorry. There's no hard feelings in Survivor.
Oh, make no apologies, Steve. You are the winner of this season. So one of the main themes of the season was your very strong alliance, really from the beginning of the game, with Rob and Larry. And both of them ended up getting voted out, but you had nothing to do with that. Were you planning to stick with those guys all the way through?
Put all my marbles in that basket. I was ready to take it to the end.
Right, and even if it did play out that way, I'm sure you would have still stood a great chance to win the game anyway. So I'll see you at the after party, right, Steve?
Absolutely. I'm there. I'm there.
Great. So I'll let you go. I see there's a line of people still waiting to interview you. So congrats again. Okay, so before I head over to the party myself, I'd like to thank everybody for watching this video. It was a fun project for me while I took a break from preparing for Season 6, which, fingers crossed, is going to be the best yet in terms of the challenges, production value, the cast. So I'm really excited, really looking forward to it. Can't wait to see what you guys think about it come the fall. So thanks again for all the support. I'm constantly surprised by just the amount of likes and comments that these videos get. And as long as you guys keep enjoying them, I'll keep making them. So have a great summer, everyone, and we'll talk to you again this fall.